So we're talking about virtual events. There was a NetApp Ready Set live stream event that happened, VMon, Cisco Live, Sapphire Now. I'm just kind of wondering from the group, what have been, what are your top takeaways? What do you think about these events?
Obviously, we're, with the times that we're in now, with the global pandemic, the in-person events are no longer possible. The virtual events, it's a completely different experience, right, than an in-person event. And I think your expectations about what the event is going to be like has to be completely flipped around. And I think that the best virtual events are the ones that are trying to keep a format that are like similar events, meaning that a lot of the benefit of the in-person conferences is the interaction, is the communication, it's the immediate feedback from a one-on-one question to a subject matter expert. Now, if you can recreate that sort of environment in a virtual event, I think you're going to get a lot more of the positive benefit that you get out of a physical event. A lot of virtual events are just glorified webinar, back-to-back webinars, which is not, this is something that I'm not going to dedicate, several days of my busy schedule for, right? I need, vendor interaction. I need, additional events. Veeam did a pretty good job with our virtual conference. We did live interaction with the presenters. There was a live performance from Keith Urban where you could actually chat with him live, which is, I think that added to some of the experience. There was the virtual expo hall where you could interact with sponsors and vendors. There was even swag that you'd get sent to you. So, trying to keep those events as similar to physical events, I think is the right approach, to make this a worthwhile endeavor, because our time is very, very valuable.
For me, with virtual events, it's been very much taking a different attitude into them. You've got to accept it's not the same kind of thing. You're not going to get that kind of networking opportunity. You're not going to get the chance to catch up with old friends. That's not how these events are. I'm very much looking at them as a learning opportunity, and on two levels. I think, I like attending events. I always get quite a lot from them. But during a year, when you're attending events physically, there's only so many events you can go to. I think in my case, what I've been trying to do is that particularly events that maybe I wouldn't normally get to go to, I make sure I'm registered for them. And then rather than worrying about, can I schedule them in at the time that they're running, so if I take VMon, for example, actually, I attended VMon. I have attended a physical version of that. I found it a really good event. But what I did was I made sure I was kind of around for the keynote sessions, and then I've just got notes to be able to go back and watch the kind of the pre-recorded, the breakouts, and go back and watch them separately. Because what I found with all of these events so far is they're all being left online for a period afterwards. And I think it's interesting that one of the things I think Veeam are going to be doing is refreshing the content that's there. So it's not just the event content that was recorded there and then. It's actually a whole bunch of event content that's going to kind of get refreshed through the summer months just to keep people kind of going back. So I think there is opportunity there for us to treat these events differently and see them as an opportunity for education, for an opportunity to just get people keep coming back. So I think it's definitely positives in the way that some of these virtual events are running.
Do businesses and organizations need to start thinking about these in a more of a benefit to them, and give your employees actual time to be away from the keyboard, so to speak, to attend a virtual event? Do we need to have a leadership sort of initiative that says, if you're going to plan to attend these virtual sessions, that you are in attendance? And if you're not, that's fair enough. Don't just use them to fill up your calendar. And by the same reasoning, if you see somebody's attending it, then reschedule whatever it is you're trying to get them to go to, the other meeting.
Yeah, it's kind of the experience that I had. I can relate to what you were saying a lot, Glenn. It's the best laid intentions that I had to put these things in my schedule like I would in a physical event. I would block my time. But then I would find, the reality of my day job, if you will, creeping in. Or just, to be honest, my own propensity to look at another window on a screen in my office versus staying focused on the session. We're looking at our own company doing our virtual mid-year kickoff. Normally it's in person, now it's a virtual event, and we've spread it out over more days. We've looked at the content differently, so it's not like the same content, just virtual. We're actually doing more breakouts. So I think maybe there are lessons being learned as we all adapt to this new normal of a virtual workplace, whether it's, virtual meetings with customers or virtual conferences, is, how do we get the best transfer of information? And how do I get the most out of my time being spent, rather than try to block an entire event for however many days it is? It might be more productive for me to look at the agenda, pick off the keynotes, because those are usually quite valuable to me. And if there's different breakouts or other content, maybe look at doing it post event and not trying to cram it all into the same amount of time.
We're seeing the same thing. Like normally where we could do an 8-hour in-person session, we're scheduling our Solution Architect Summit where we're doing half-day sessions because it's just too much. I agree with exactly what Glenn said. People don't respect the calendar as much because they know, well, that's a virtual event, you could watch it later. I'm also having focus issues, like you said, with multiple screens, John. It's easy to look away, or we're not in that the social aspect of it, which makes it very valuable.
I did a podcast with one of Adam's colleagues, Michael Cade, and one of the things he talked about on that show was about how this is a real opportunity for vendors to learn, because I think none of them have really considered in the time. Well, lots of vendors have done kind of virtual events, have done online versions of events, smaller versions or whatever. They've never really thought about at the scale and doing their really big events in this way. Do you think there's an opportunity for a lot of innovation in this space? So maybe new platforms, new ways of delivery. You kind of talk about things like VR and etc. Do you think that's something that we will see more of?
Yeah, I think innovation. Look what Zoom went through with their security, right? I mean, they fixed that pretty quickly. We're using Teams quite a bit. There's so many different tools, but we have WebEx, we have the Citrix GoToMeeting, and Free Conference. There's so many of these that we're like, hey, how do I do my background here? How do I, in addition to innovation, how do you keep it consistent across the platforms?
The VeeamON one was very good, and as Adam mentioned, I found the feedback that we were getting, chatting here with people directly was excellent. I think without that, we sort of lose interest. I definitely do anyway. If I click on something and it doesn't sort of take me to where I wanted to go or what I thought it was going to be, it doesn't work so well. So I think it's change of mindset, but tons and tons of learning opportunities and, try new things, I guess.
I think that moving from a physical to a virtual conference, think about when you're going to the physical conferences, who dominates from a networking perspective? All the biggest partners, right? They have these huge events. They get all these people from the company. They get executive time, all this great stuff. Do virtual events by removing the networking option that I like so much, even though I'm not one of those big guys. Does it democratize this stuff a little bit and give the little guys, does it even the playing field and take away the access for the big guys to that, now everything is, everybody can touch everybody else just with a Zoom as quickly as anybody else. I mean, just this morning I had a conference call, a Zoom call with a board member of a tech company who happens to be a CFO of another tech company that I would have never had. I never would have talked to him. I never would have met him at a virtual event, at a physical event. But just because of the nature of things now, I was able to actually get access to this guy and have a nice half-hour conversation with him about strategic stuff. So I wonder, from a virtual perspective, what you guys think about that. If you're a small VAR, small partner, does the virtual help you or hurt you?
There is a loss of the physical. That's not just, Glenn, I get to see you at Insight or other events, and I like that, or anybody else on the team. I don't have that, hey, give you a hug, let's talk about something in person. There's other physical aspects that come along with an event that change. They're not there.
Some of the changes we'll see will be probably more subtle, though. I don't think we're going to see a big shift to all online events, or I think what's more likely is that we will see a big move back to in-person events for all of the reasons that everybody's talked about. I mean, ultimately, for the vendor running the event, the ROI will be the thing that matters. So if I spend all this money on a real event, how does that compare in terms of what I get back versus running as a virtual event? Because running a virtual event, I'm guessing, is a whole lot cheaper than running a physical event. However, if you're not getting kind of the dollars back in your pocket, as kind of Glenn touched on earlier on, then where's the value in that? There's been a lot of conversation about how the last 3-4 months is going to change the way the world operates. personally, as a looking at human nature, I'm not convinced it will. I think lots of things, the minute we get the chance to go back and do the things that we used to do, I think people are going to go and just go back and do the things they used to do, and give this 3 or 4 years, and this will all be forgotten, and it'll just be an occasional glance back and say, "Do you remember that time we couldn't leave our house?"
It's a dangerous game to look at immediate returns from a virtual event versus a physical event, because there's so much soft, benefit of face-to-face meetings between leaders of organizations that you just can't put a dollar value on, right? Relationships that can't be cultivated through a virtual event. Deals that come together in 16 to 18 months, or 12 to 18 months post-event because of those relationships that you built. At a physical meeting, those numbers just can't be quantified in any real way. So I think it is a dangerous game for organizations just to look at the the bottom line or immediate ROI of a virtual event versus a physical event. And calculating the costs of sending your people to these events versus not sending your people to these events. Personally, at the company that I work for, they are looking at the cost of not travel versus how much money, how much revenue we're bringing in. And they're very delighted that revenues haven't dropped off as sharply as they thought with a complete moratorium on travel. So I think that will become part of the calculus going forward.